Danielle, question. Is there a black man hiding under your bed?
Don't play victim with me. I have to walk in heels all day long. You get to sit in a chair and roll.
We're going to be doing psychological role-playing here, Bree, and a funny word like Boise will ruin the mood. We need something that sounds serious.
How about Palestine?
Just any recipe. Some of these have been in my family since before the war of northern aggression.
You mean the Civil War?
I mean what I mean.
Desperate Housewives dominated the early 2000s and became a pop culture classic that I have been hearing about for quite literally decades. So imagine my surprise when I finally decided to watch it for the first time in 2025, only to realize that this wild shit might as well have been written by the same people who wrote Project 2025. Despite watching 8 seasons of outright Republican hogwash, I was surprised to find barely any commentary on the internet acknowledging it as such. So I said to myself, ain't no way. This show had no business being this popular and under scrutinized. So that changes today. I'm going to show you all the conservative propaganda you missed in Desperate Housewives. Desperate Housewives doesn't just happen to be big-time conservative propaganda. It knows it is. They just don't call it conservative propaganda. Instead, they just have Brie Vandekamp repeatedly refer to it as old-fashioned values. But I know conservative bullshit when I see it, okay? It is incredible the lengths the show's creator Mark Cherry, a gay Republican, went to use this group of women characters he created to push and normalize sexism, conservatism, the normalization of sleeping with minors, racism, the demonization of people with disabilities and mental health issues, fatphobia, downright hatred of poor people, domestic violence, and more. No, like seriously, more. The man should be investigated based solely on the sheer volume of storylines that involve grown adults minors. And in 9.9 out of 10 of all those storylines, the child is vilified as the problem.
Police! Police!
It shouldn't surprise anyone that a gay Republican man would have some problematic views on even gayness. But somehow, I was still surprised to see Bob, one half of the neighborhood's only resident gay couple, depicted as preying on straight men and turning them gay.
I hate to break it to you, but Bob's always had a major crush on Carlos.
Well, I hate to break it to Bob, but Carlos is as straight as they come.
So is Bob's college roommate, and his thesis advisor, and his basketball coach.
Well, that's why he likes basketball.
Bob's college nickname was Flipper, and it wasn't because of his dolphin tattoo.
Even teenage Andrew, Brie Vandekamp's gay son, is portrayed as preying on and seducing his mother's adult AA sponsor, who was just too weak to not sleep with this teenage boy because of his sex addiction. Now, does any of that mean I didn't enjoy the show? No, it does not. What it does mean is that I wanted to bitch slap each and every one of the wives at one point or another, and I wanted to curb stomp each and every one of the husbands on a regular basis. But that's neither here nor there. The point is, I enjoyed the show, despite the glaring conservative agenda and all the up storylines and dialogue that the show cooked up in order to push it. And I am dying to make videos on each of the wives, the husbands, how the kids deserved better, and all type of fun shit. But I could not start making those fun videos without first making sure we're all aware of the many ways this show was on absolute shit. This is not me telling you not to like the show. When you're done here, go watch a video I made on my main channel, Olay, called How This Didn't Age Well, Destroyed Media Literacy, so that you can understand the purpose of me doing media analysis like this and why it's okay to like problematic shit. So you can like Desperate Housewives. So do I guess. But there's just no way I'm gonna let them get away with this. I don't give a if I'm like 20 years late. But before we get into the train wreck that is Desperate Housewives, let's get a better look at what might be propaganda today. The Pentagon recently disbanded the Defense Advisory Committee on Women in the Services, claiming that it was promoting divisive feminist agendas in the military. Calling feminism divisive and bringing the gender wars to the military is sure to hurt women who serve now and in the future. Right-leaning outlets like the Epoch Times cites quotes from the Secretary of the Dow, Pete Hegseth, about how the committee was advancing a divisive feminist agenda that hurts combat readiness. The left-leaning outlets like CNN included another perspective from Dr. Kyle Ann Hunter, a Marine Corps veteran who was on the committee, who found that their policies have very often gotten labeled as sort of women's issues or women's policies, but they also help men. Follow along at ground.news/Olay. I found this story on Ground News, and Ground News is the perfect sponsor for this video because making sure the media we're consuming is objective and unbiased is literally their bread and butter. Not only does their app and website let you compare how the media is framing any given story worldwide and get context on each source, in this particular climate where everyone's targeting you with clickbait and misinformation, where it's hard to tell what's real, what's fake, and what's just straight up propaganda and maybe even AI, a tool like Ground News is invaluable, especially when you're literally making a video about how the media manipulates us. With Ground News, we can see that there's been over 60 articles published on this specific story, the political bias for each source, and who owns them. In this case, we only see 8% independent reporting, so Ground News really can't be beat because it makes it easy for me to make sure that I'm not just spewing unsubstantiated mess at you. Go to ground.news/Olay or scan the QR code on screen to subscribe. Ground News is giving my viewers 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan. This is their best deal of the year and it'll only be available for a limited time, so you better jump on it. Ground News is also subscriber funded, so not only will you not see any ads on their website, which contributes to sensationalism and clickbait reporting, but by subscribing, you're not only getting an amazing resource, you're supporting their work directly and helping keep media reporting honest. Thank you for sponsoring this video, Ground News. Now back to it. So without further ado, let's get to it. Now, the sexism in Desperate Housewives goes without saying. The entire show is built around housewives who spend the entirety of the show either aspiring to marriage and motherhood or being judged profusely for not aspiring to those things to the point of being forced into it.
A career-obsessed lesbo who would die alone and be eaten by her cats.
The main characters in Desperate Housewives are as follows: Bree Vanderkamp, Lynette Scavo and her husband Tom Scavo, Susan Meyer and her series love interest Mike Delfino, Gabrielle Solis and her husband Carlos, and Edie Britt. At the outset of Desperate Housewives, one could assume that Susan Meyer is the main protagonist of the Housewives, but one would be wrong. Bree Vanderkamp and Lynette Scavo are the most important wives, and they and Gabrielle drive a lot of the more important plots forward, especially after season 1. But Bree and Lynette are not just the most important wives, they are instrumental to the show's conservative agenda pushing. Bree is one of the only characters that makes being conservative explicitly a part of her identity, regularly announcing she's a Republican and waxing poetic about traditional values non-stop.
You?
Oh, I don't do that.
Why not?
I'm a Republican.
Bree defines herself only by being a wife and mother, cooking dinner and keeping up appearances, and she takes great issue with women who do not, despite the fact that her children mostly hate her and her husbands and boyfriends consisted of Rex the adulterer who hated her guts, George the incel psychopath pharmacist who murdered Rex, the sex-addicted AA sponsor who her underage gay son, and Orson Hodge, a very bizarre man at best who eventually comes to resent her success. However, while Bree may be the only one of the wives running around calling herself a Republican, please know that all the motherfuckers on Wisteria Lane are conservative, especially Bree and Lynette, and Mrs. McCluskey, but we'll talk about her later. Bree and Lynette were actually specifically inspired by the mother of the gay Republican who made this show. Those bitches are big Republicans, and despite the fact that the show tries to present them as opposites, so much so that Lynette be dying from envy in Bree because she thinks Bree is everything she isn't, they are two halves of the same coin. And if you somehow missed that Lynette was a Republican just like Bree because the show tries to portray Lynette like she's some kind of feminist just because she used to have a job, I'm here to tell you that no woman who isn't a Republican becomes best friends with a Republican that they aspire to be like. Lynette was a successful advertising exec who did not want children, but the price she paid for somebody else man, yes, I never forgot that, Lynette, that was somebody else man. The price she paid for somebody else man and marrying him was having 5 children she was stuck raising, mostly in lieu of having a career. Gabby was a shallow to the point of moral bankruptcy model who got married on the explicit condition of not having children, only to quite literally be forced into having and raising 2 children. Of the 4 leading ladies, Susan puts the desperate in Desperate Housewives, and despite being an absolutely lousy piece of shit mother, the show plays it for quirk works, and her daughter Julie is left to raise her while she do nothing but run behind a plumber who stay being accused of killing people, and she had the nerve to go have another child when she ain't even raised the first one for real. Yet, all Susan could talk about in this show is how women need a husband who pay all the bills and things. Please know I will be getting justice for Julie soon enough, because Julie is a textbook example of children being forced to become adults to raise their childish ass parents who weaponize their incompetence. Susan swears she's a 16-year-old girl twirling her hair going, "Did I do that?" every time she something up exponentially. I could slap her whole ass here. Anyway, the conservative propaganda is so heavy in Desperate Housewives that 2 of the 4 main housewives desperately did not want children for anything in the world. But they are the exact bitches pressured into having multiple children throughout the show, and the word abortion is never even whispered. It's like they were written to not want children just so the show could advance the idea that the right thing is for women who don't want children to have children they don't want. Otherwise, it's selfish and their lives would have no meaning. So Lynette, a woman struggling to manage the 4 children she already has, is forced to have another child in season 6. And when she dared to express not wanting the baby, just not being happy about it, her husband doesn't allow her to express this. And Susan, the shittiest mother on the show, at least the second shittiest, because Edie is not a good mother either, child, Susan starts giving her some bullshit about how children are a blessing.
I'm pregnant.
You are? That's amazing. Wait, why were you crying?
Let's see, I'm in my 40s. My husband is back in school. I'm the sole breadwinner. I don't know how I'm gonna do this whole baby thing again. And also because I can't quiet that one voice in my mind that keeps saying, maybe I shouldn't.
Oh, honey. Lynette, you can do whatever you think it is you need to do.
I know, lucky me.
It's weird, everybody talks about a kid being a gift. The only gift where you puke for 9 months before you receive it and then scream the day it arrives. They are a gift, Lynette. I know that because I spent the last few hours thinking that I was gonna lose mine. I realized that I would trade everything I own, I would give everything I ever will have for just one more day as Julie's mom.
Meanwhile, even Lynette and Tom's own child knew they ain't had no business having no more kids.
You guys have been concerned because I've been so sick in the mornings. Well, I'm gonna let you know why. I'm pregnant with twins.
Any questions?
I have more of a statement. You two are so irresponsible. You should have been using birth control. You're in college. Do you know what the odds are now that you'll graduate? Like 0. You have a new job. One that you'll have to quit once the baby comes. So I hope you're both happy. You've just destroyed your futures for a few minutes of pleasure.
When Carlos switches out Gabrielle's birth control with something else so she could unwittingly have unprotected sex with him and get pregnant with a child he knows she don't want, she is not even allowed to consider not having the baby. It's a foregone conclusion that she has to have the baby and simply be miserable about it internally while rising to the occasion of parenting children mostly on her own because Carlos thinks that's a woman's job. I could spit. Desperate Housewives isn't just anti-abortion. Desperate Housewives is aggressively pro-forcing women to have and mother children they do not want.
Oh, wait, I gotta tell you, I was having trouble with swelling, so the doctor took me off the pill, so you're just gonna have to put on a condom.
Condom?
Yeah.
What's the big deal? Let's risk it.
Let's risk it?
Yeah.
Later in the series, Susan's daughter Julie gets pregnant for Lynette's significantly younger son Porter that she had no business sleeping with in the first place, but put a pin in that for now. Trust that we are going to talk about Desperate Housewives' love of inappropriate relationships with children and barely legal adults in short order. But when Julie gets pregnant for Porter, she doesn't tell Porter. She doesn't tell Porter, Susan, or anyone else because she does not want the baby and she has already decided to give the baby up for adoption. But when Susan finds out Julie's pregnant, despite Julie explaining to this hard-headed, good-for-nothing bitch that she is giving the baby up for adoption because she does not want to be a mother. Not only does Susan, the same bitch who barely raised Julie and is the reason Julie don't want kids in the first place, decides what Julie wants because she wants to be a grandmother. So she slanders Julie to the potential adoptive parents to stop them from going through with the adoption. Then she hunts down who Julie's baby daddy is so she can inform him of her pregnancy and convince him to not only assert his parental rights to prevent her from placing the baby up for adoption, but to force her to be in the child's life because Porter literally lives across the street from Susan, which is, Julie's mother and childhood home and exactly where she visits when she comes. And Susan puts a nursery in the home for the baby because she plans to be a grandmother to the child that Julie told her she don't want. So Julie was literally forced into motherhood by the bitch that didn't mother her. And the show is just like, yeah, this is cute, right? This is cute. Let's make this floundering adult woman co-parent a child with a maybe 19-year-old up who has no education and no income, which means his mother, Lynette, the woman who was already forced to be mother to 5 kids she did not want, must now be the grandmother who takes care of her son's child.
No! God, please, no! No!
The conservative agenda to use babies and motherhood as bondage for women is alive and well in Desperate Housewives, I tell you. And yet, the show is still problematic in 962 other ways, but none more than how hard it worked to normalize statutorily raping minors. It would be one thing if it were like 1 or 2 storylines, but baby, there were at least 9. The main storyline like this revolved around one of the series protagonists, Gabrielle Solis, played by Eva Longoria, and her 16-year-old gardener, John, played by Jesse Metcalfe. Let me start by saying that Gabrielle Solis is a despicable person in so many ways that we do not have time to get into in this video, but trust that we will on a later date, because I happened to glimpse a YouTube video about how Gabby grew to most of the characters on the show, and I genuinely wasn't sure what planet they was on, yeah, respectfully. Gabrielle was so wicked that having an affair with a 16-year-old boy is far from the worst shit she ever did. And mind you, I don't give a that she was cheating on her husband, because Carl is horrible in his own right in several ways. Chief among them, tampering with Gabby's birth control to force her to get pregnant with a baby he knew she did not want. And domestic violence, because I will never forget that gripped her up to force her to sign a posting up against her will. And yet and still, all of that still pales in comparison to Gabby causing Carlos's mother to die behind her cheating with this little boy. And not only never telling Carl, but wanting to pocket the money from the hospital settlement regarding her death. That's an evil bitch, yeah? But anyway, the show plays Gabby and this little boy out to be some kind of romantic, sexy dynamic that we supposed to be into, and I want everybody locked up. Carl and others treat Gabby statutorily raping this teenage boy as anything but that. Instead, it's framed like John is some kind of seducer. In fact, when his parents find out and his mother is rightfully furious about this grown-ass bitch raping her son, she is portrayed as unreasonable. And even John's own father sees nothing wrong with this woman fucking his teenage son.
I get why she's so angry with me, but what I don't get is why you're so nice.
Well, John's a big boy. Whatever happened between the two of you was his mistake as much as yours.
He is literally not a big boy. It is factually not as much his mistake as hers. He is a child, and she is a grown-ass married woman.
What the fuck?
At one point, in order to further vilify the teenage victim, it's shown that he's being statutorily raped by other older women in the neighborhood, as if to be like, he playing Gabby, because he has her thinking he's in love when really all the old bitches.
It's you, wasn't it?
Hello, John. Long time no see.
One of the neighbors saw an Aston Martin driving away. And what do you know?
Well, someone had to tend to the yard. You were busy elsewhere.
Okay, so you caught me doing it with somebody else. What's the big deal?
You're supposed to be in love with me.
Jail.
What?
How many times did you say it? How many times did you whisper in my ear? You're the only woman I'll ever love. So were you lying to me? Were you just trying to get me into bed?
Jail, right away.
No, of course not.
Meanwhile, the discussion should be, why are there multiple adult women comfortable with underage boys in their neighborhood? And someone please call the police, because these predator-ass bitches preying on the teenage god, no, oh my god. John is continuously portrayed as this smooth-talking man pursuing Gabby. And Carl even roughs him up on a couple occasions like his wife ain't the rapist. And John is not even Gabby's only inappropriate relationship with minors. The gal kisses John's friend, who is gay, but very much so still a minor. Then there was also the weird storyline where Zach Young was trying to date her and she was hanging out with him and drinking with him and doing enough with him that he had the opportunity to finesse his little predatorial behind into her bed. And granted, Zach is not a minor at this point. Barely. But the boy is still a child she literally watched grow up. They truly wasn't writing nothing but for Gabby to get into, you hear me? And maybe we could have let these incidents slide. Maybe I could have overlooked them. But then, they had Bree's teenage daughter, Danielle, her history teacher.
Danielle, Danielle, he is your history teacher, and he is 35 years old. Robert says age is just a number. Don't you dare leave this house. You can't break us up. I love him, and he loves me.
Her high school history teacher. And the entire storyline is painted like Danielle is this manipulative, fast-ass hoe who pursued the teacher and wanted to destroy his marriage.
Danielle, you haven't touched your dinner.
She doesn't like spring lamb. She prefers old goat.
I'm glad you guys think it's so funny that my life is over.
Your mother was right to end that relationship. The man was your teacher and married.
He's getting a divorce.
Well, that hardly bolsters his suitability. Danielle, please eat something.
Don't worry, dear. Hunger strikes demand self-control, and as we've seen, that's hardly her strong suit.
When are you gonna take me seriously?
When you start acting like an adult.
Well, she sleeps with him. That's a start.
I hate you. I hate all of you.
Just look at how they resolve this f***ed-up-ass storyline. Like Danielle is just a scorned lover rather than a child and a victim of abuse.
Oh, Danielle, I thought you'd be with Mr. Filati tonight.
Oh, you'll be happy to know he dumped me.
He dumped you?
Said it was getting too messy, that I was gonna complicate his divorce. Don't pretend you're sorry.
I don't plan to.
I hope this doesn't make history class too awkward.
Oh, you don't have to worry about that. I went to the principal and got his ass fired. And then when he called to yell at me for squealing on him, I recorded the call and sent a tape of it to his wife. Thanks to me, he'll be getting nothing in this divorce.
I must say that was rather underhanded.
Yes. I wonder where she gets it.
Dog, if I spit. They also had Bree's underage son sleep with her AA sponsor, and yet again, he's portrayed as the evil preying on Bree's poor sponsor who's battling with sex addiction, so he couldn't possibly be held responsible for sleeping with a minor. Holy! Then it was revealed that Catherine took Susan's accountant's nephew's virginity when he was staying with Susan for the summer when he was 16, and it's also played like some nice, consensual, steamy affair when they have this return as an adult, all excited up to start sleeping with Catherine again. Mind you, think about this. The was so young when Catherine him that when she sees him as an adult, she literally didn't recognize him.
Oh, this is my cousin Tim. Tim, this is the neighbors.
Mrs. Davis?
Davis? Do we know each other?
He stayed with us that summer that he went to band camp.
Oh, yeah. I remember. Gosh, you're all grown up.
Hey, it's Tim. It was great seeing you the other day. Yeah, I can't stop thinking about you either. I've got the whole place to myself.
She came over for some drinks and we got to talking and started reminiscing and all these old feelings came rushing back.
What do you mean old feelings?
And because no one's child is safe on Wisteria Lane, Lynette's 16-year-old son, Porter's best friend's mom, starts having a affair with him and gets pregnant. And the show makes Lynette out to be a villain for trying to stop this because the woman's husband beats her. And I'm over here like, okay, domestic violence, wrong. Raping minors, also wrong. And what's that thing they say about two wrongs don't make a right? Then, when Julie returns to Wisteria Lane at the ripe age of 24 years old, they, for some inexplicable reason, have her hanging out with the high school children, so much so that teenage high school student Danny starts pursuing her. And even though Julie tells him it's not gonna happen, at no point does anyone ever express age as the reason it can't happen. And in similar fashion, the same John that Gabby was when he was a minor shows up as an adult. And when Gabby's teenage niece Anna starts working at his restaurant, he starts flirting with her and taking her home and shit enough for her to think that they might to the point where the little girl gone and buy some condoms. And all the show does is make Anna out to be a hoe and a problem as a teenage girl because of how men respond to her. Let me tell y'all something. We would be here all day long if I tried to name each and every time the show hypersexualized girls and women, slut shamed them, and justified happening to them, seeing as that's at the heart of the show's entire premise, which deems all these women desperate out the gate. So I ain't even about to go too deep down that road. But there are a few glaring examples that I would be remiss if I didn't call attention to. I'm thinking about the time Lynette's son, Parker, was spying on the neighbor taking a shower, and Lynette decided to go reprimand and shame the neighbor he was spying on because she used to be a stripper. And thus, she's a whore and somehow responsible for corrupting Lynette's pure son. I'm also thinking about when Lynette shamed the out of Susan for doing some cam girl sex work to get her family out of debt. And I'm also thinking of when Susan shamed an entire strip club. And for as many times as you don't hear me say police, police. All these conservative hoes and their alleged conservative values they got on Wisteria Lane ain't never once picked up the phone to call the police or do a real thing about these adults these kids. Actually, I lied, because Lynette did give that woman who Porter a good little cut of ass and put the fear of God in her and shamed the out of her. Yet, she never once criticized or judged Gabby for doing the same thing to John, was playing poker with her faithfully. And it's not just the normalization of statutory rape, particularly where teenage boys and girls were concerned, but there was also just the outright normalization of rape on this show. At one point in the series, Orson Hodges' ex-wife Alma drugged and raped him.
These are sleeping pills and these are... You raped my husband. We made love.
And Orson just shrugs it off when Bree tells him it happened, because the idea that's being pushed here is that a man can't truly be raped or negatively affected by being taken advantage of by a woman, because men are always supposed to want sex with anyone who'll f them.
I remember drinking the scotch and then Alma suddenly sitting up, but after that, nothing.
I'm not sure how to tell you this, but after Alma knocked you out, she assaulted you sexually. She had sex with you.
Well, that's impossible.
Your drink was laced with pills for erectile dysfunction.
But I was dead to the world.
No, dear, you were dead to the waist.
I had sex with Alma and I wasn't even conscious. Reminiscent of our marriage.
Like, this is no joke. She raped you and your mother helped.
That's the same implicit belief driving the show to constantly downplay the young boys being raped by adult women as consenting, enthusiastic, and even lucky. The downplaying of both statutory rape and outright rape all throughout Desperate Housewives was horrific. But nothing was worse than how they did it in the final season. Revolved entirely around the idea that Gabby and Carlos did something wrong when Gabby's stepfather, who raped her during her childhood, started stalking her, broke into her home, and tried to rape her again, forcing Carlos to hit him in defense of her to stop him. Then he dies. But instead of calling the police and very easily informing them that the intruder tried to rape his wife, they instead decide to bury his body in the woods.
Hell no, man.
Then the entire final season involves Carlos becoming an alcoholic from the guilt of killing an innocent man. The innocent man being his wife's rapist who broke into their home and tried to rape her again.
Huh?
I need y'all to understand that Gabrielle and Carlos are horrible people who do horrible things throughout the entire series and feel very little remorse, take very little accountability, and experience very little fallout for legitimately horrible things they've done to innocent people and each other. But the thing the show decides they're going to beat us over the head that their villains racked with guilt over was killing the rapist who broke in the house. Gabrielle and Carlos divorced once. She married this rich, fine white mayor, and she and Carlos assaulted him once, causing him to fall into the ocean, left the at sea. And after he survives and comes to retaliate against Carlos and ends up dying on their front step in the process, there were zero criminal consequences for that series of criminal events where the mayor ends up dead after they have an affair. But the writers of this ass show actually had Gabrielle and Carlos be as clear-cutly in the right as to have a rapist who faked his death decades earlier, stalk them, break into their home, and try to rape Gabrielle. And that is somehow the situation Gabrielle starts insisting they can't get away with, and they're gonna go to jail, so they need to hide the body and then spend the entire season with them and the girls acting racked with guilt for killing a rapist. They actually had Susan and Carlos fixing their mouths to shame Gabby for being able to sleep at night. Gabby is a gal who had an affair with a 16-year-old child that got Carlos' mommy hit with a car and killed. And that bitch ain't never been shamed in the entire series for not feeling guilty. Gabby and Carlos' affair got her second husband killed. No guilt. Carlos and Gabby never get to see their biological daughter ever again, and he didn't give a but he cannot sleep because the rapist dead? His biological child is somewhere on the run Don't call me run out there. The final season of Desperate Housewives is an unwatchable an abomination, you hear me? Nothing but rape apologia. And Desperate Housewives isn't just obsessed with adultifying minors in order to justify grown-ass parental figures in their neighborhoods and schools statutorily raping them. They also just like to adultify them in general. Susan's daughter, Julie, is the poster child for children who appear incredibly mature because they have been forced to parent their inept parents.
Since she was a little girl, Susan Meyer wanted to be a mother in the worst way.
Yeah.
And from the first day she brought Julie home from the hospital,
What?
she was. Despite her desire to do well by her daughter, Susan suffered through countless failures.
Throughout the show, we watch Julie parent Susan, while Susan spends all of her time worried about running behind either Mike or Carl, or Edie, because she was running behind Edie to try and make sure Edie didn't get to one of them first. Susan, Julie, and the other characters regularly acknowledge that Julie is the most mature between she and her adult mother, and that it's Julie who has to cook, handle the finances, and emotionally support Susan. But it's never acknowledged as a criticism of Susan or something that's unfair to Julie. Susan is just credited as somehow getting it right and having the best kid, when Julie was a good kid because she had to be, because her mother refused to be a good parent. Which is why, as frustrating as I'm sure it was to people who don't unpack why children of their parents seem so mature as children but struggle as adults, it made perfect sense to me that once Julie becomes an adult, she starts making questionable decisions like sleeping with married men and getting pregnant for Porter Scavo, who was way too young for her, but was still aware enough of her mother's failures to recognize why she didn't want to be a mother. I say all of that about the adultification of Julie because she walked so Penny Scavo could run. You hear me? In season 7, after Lynette gives birth to the 5th child she didn't want, Lynette turns her 10-year-old daughter Penny into the baby's caretaker because her lousy-ass adult sons can't be bothered. But what the show advances is that Penny, a child, is more qualified to take care of her baby sibling than her adult brothers because girls and women are just naturally more inclined to child rearing. Penny starts losing sleep in school and falling behind because she's trying to take care of the baby to help her mother that rather exploit her young daughter than make her husband or adult sons help, or to simply stop having children they do not have the resources to take care of. Which is why I lived for Porter or Preston, who knows which one it was, reading the out of Lynette and Tom when they announced they were having yet another baby. My reason for highlighting the mistreatment and adultification of both Julie and Penny is because this is the real plight of daughters, specifically older daughters who are forced to become parents and caretakers to babies their irresponsible ass parents have, which is very common in conservative households that are against contraceptives, use babies as chains around women's ankles, and force them to have far more children than they can raise. Sad. So, we have covered the agenda to normalize minors and the weird adultification of minors. Now, let's talk about the extreme ableism in Desperate Housewives, shall we? Before we even dive into the deep end of Desperate Housewives' extreme ableism, let me first make sure y'all understand that in true conservative fashion, Desperate Housewives does not believe in mental health altogether. Like, period. This should be obvious out the gate, seeing as the show literally begins with one of the women committing suicide and being called selfish both by her friends and widower. But if it wasn't obvious, it should be crystal clear by the time Lynette's wild-ass twins, who obviously have ADHD, get diagnosed with ADHD, and she treats their diagnoses as an evil lie meant to trick her into giving her kids medicine that would destroy them and their wonderful personalities. So she refused to give these the Adderall their wild asses were prescribed, only to instead start taking it herself to keep up with her 3 children and the million things on her plate that her husband isn't helping her with. And instead of addressing the real problem, that Lynette is exhausted because she was being pressured into motherhood by a husband who wasn't pulling his weight, the show instead decides to treat it like Adderall turned her into a crackhead, and the message the audience is left with is Adderall is bad and ADHD is fake, despite the fact that the boys never stopped exhibiting all the signs and struggles of people raw dogging ADHD throughout the entire series. And as someone who has ADHD and had to jump through 10 hoops as an adult to get that diagnosis, only to call home and be informed by my mother that my pediatrician been told him I had ADHD as a child, and these motherfuckers Kanye shrugged and went about their business. Trust that Lynette pissed me the off for doing this to our sons, okay? But not as bad as she pissed me off when she was actively waging war on Tom for wanting to go to therapy. Then she decided his depression was a choice, refused to let him take the antidepressants he was prescribed. Then when he was prescribed medical marijuana because she wouldn't let him take his antidepressants, she switched out his weed with oregano. And this conservative piece of shit ass show actually tells us that Tom didn't notice the difference between oregano and marijuana, but because he thought he was high, he was happy again, because depression and happiness is just a choice to make.
I only threw out the pot because I didn't think you needed it. And you know, I was right. You got happy all on your own.
Don't try to justify what you did by making it seem like some sort of master plan.
It wasn't a master plan. I lucked out because for some reason, while you were high on oregano, you made a decision to live in the moment. You stood over our daughter's crib and you let go of the stress and the fear, and you focused on the good in your life.
If I scream, and that's just me getting your mouth wet a little bit, you know, you ain't heard shit yet, because it's time to really get into the ableism. If Desperate Housewives don't do nothing else, they are going to vilify, criminalize, and pathologize anyone with a disability or dealing with any mental health issues. My God, the villain every season is always a motherfucker dealing with some mental health issues. You hear me? And don't let them be black. Then they might just have the season end with the police killing them in the front room and everyone carrying on like this is fine. Yeah, that happened, but I'm jumping the gun. We will be talking about the hate crime that was season 2 in a minute. Every villain, mystery, antagonist, suspicious, or disliked person on this show is disabled, going through mental health issues, or battling addiction. By the time Desperate Housewives decided for absolutely no reason at all to have Vanessa Williams screaming and jumping on furniture in a restaurant because she saw a little person, that's when I knew the showrunners had a list somewhere that they was checking twice to make sure every ableist idea that ever crossed their minds came to life on this show. The show opens with one of the housewives, Mary Alice, committing suicide, and all we can hear repeatedly throughout the season is Bree calling her selfish. Even her own husband didn't have no compassion for her.
Can I be frank?
Of course.
I don't care what her reasons were. Maybe she was depressed, maybe she was bored. It doesn't matter. She abandoned her husband and her son, and I'll never forgive her.
Moreover, Mary Alice's son, Zach, is shown to have mental health issues too. Mind you, the issues are never named, diagnosed, or treated in any way because neither the show nor the bitches on Wisteria Lane give a despite being the child of their dead friend they claim to love. Because he has these issues, he is treated as a dangerous ticking time bomb that everyone should stay away from. It's also through Zach's storyline that we see the show do something for the first time that it will continue to do throughout the series, and that's disincentivize trying to help people with mental health issues. Continuously throughout the show, whenever there's a character going through a mental health issue, whenever another character tries to help them instead of immediately resorting to the conservatives' position that they should be locked up because they're a lost cause, the character that tries to help or empathize with the person battling issues suffers dire consequences, because the conservative propaganda they're selling to us is that these people cannot be helped. You might be well-intentioned, but you're a fool. They can't be helped. Which is why when Martha Hubbard's sister takes a liking to Zach and empathizes with him instead of criminalizing him and ostracizing him like Susan and them have, she offers him a home and care, and Zach retaliates by beating her fucking ass within an inch of her life. The message is simple: don't help. The Susans of the world who say wash your hands of a 16-year-old who must be a criminal and psychopathic lost cause because he's having emotional breakdowns and episodes of rage after his mother unexpectedly blew her brains out in the living room. His dad's temperament is icy at best, and he recently learned that neither his mom nor dad are really his mom or dad because his real mom battled addiction, so it was only right then that Mary Alice murder her and pack her up in a literal suitcase. And we get that message again and again throughout the series. If you were missing the criminalization of with mental health issues, season 5's antagonist Dave Williams is quite literally called criminally insane in the show because he had a psychotic break after his wife and 7-year-old daughter died in a car crash, which is a pretty reasonable thing to have a mental breakdown about, no? But nothing that would make a perfectly sane man suddenly become a murderous psychopath. But that's what Desperate Housewives wants us to believe. And if you, a foolish enough person to think you could try to help him, like say, a licensed medical professional who treats him, we'll just have him murder that doctor doctor so everyone gets the message that no one can help these people. And speaking of the show wanting to demonize and disincentivize helping mentally ill and disabled people, another example of this and conservative hypocrisy is the Art Shepherd storyline in season 3. Remember, everyone knows that adult women children is rampant on Wisteria Lane, but they never call the police. They be at brunch with the predators. But when Lynette realizes that the new guy across the street who actually saved her life in a shooting is a predator who likes little boys because she stumbled into his basement and found a wall full of pictures of half-naked little boys, she is rightfully alarmed and wants this out of the community, which is fair, valid. But when the lousy-ass police don't take her seriously because the police are inept, what she instead does is galvanize the community into a mob to harass and terrorize he and his disabled sister he cares for. When Art's sister Rebecca talks to Lynette and tries to make her understand that she is in bad health and cannot take the stress of being harassed by the neighborhood, and that Lynette should not be galvanizing the community into a mob without evidence, Lynette initially dismisses her. But when she later passes away as the result of the harassment, Lynette feels so guilty she goes to apologize to Art, who finally reveals that he is, in fact, a predator. Now, this is my thing. Lynette is right to want to protect her children and the other children in the neighborhood, but mob justice and mob violence in the United States is historically unjust, horrific, prejudiced, and the people on the receiving end of that violence are usually those who fall into some marginalized group that conservatives don't give a about. Like here, a family with a disabled woman who's simply in a wheelchair, but Lynette refers to her as an invalid, a slur for people with disabilities that implies that their lives are not valid because they are impaired in some way. Throughout US history, mob justice often meant the KKK and white mobs forming to lynch, murder, wrongly arrest, and execute innocent black people and other undesirables. George Stinney comes to mind, a 13-year-old boy who was the first child sentenced to death in America because when 2 neighborhood white girls he knew went missing, despite being a part of the community's search efforts to find them, because he was black, he was accused without a shred of evidence of having done something to the girls. He was arrested, a mob then ran his family out of town, and he was given a sham of a trial by an all-white jury that sentenced his 13-year-old boy to death after deliberating for less than 10 minutes. They then put that 14-year-old child in the electric chair and killed him. These kinds of mobs are also how many black people in towns had their land stolen from them by white racists. So yeah, mob justice is wrong and people should avoid inciting it, especially without evidence. But as per the history I've just given to you, mob justice is in deep keeping with the conservative agenda. So in order to justify it, this kind of storyline was written, where Lynette, someone who tried to be cognizant and mindful of the serious consequences of this kind of mob justice, is made to feel foolish and regretful of that choice when this man does reveal himself to be a predator.
You know, in a weird way, I should thank you. My sister was a really wonderful person. She always saw the best in me, but there are things she couldn't see, or chose not to.
What do you mean?
I think you know. See, I always knew that I had to take care of Rebecca, so I could never let myself slip and do something that would hurt her. Now, I'm free, and all because of you.
You can't stay here.
Don't worry, I'm already packed.
The message there is that it doesn't matter what the potential negative and unjust consequences of mob justice are, because what if the guy is a sexual predator, planning to rape your kids, thus justifying some conservative shit. So Desperate Housewives loves justifying mob justice routinely throughout the show, which means that at any given time, the neighborhood is bullying, openly judging, and or attacking and harassing whoever is other in the neighborhood. In season 2, it's the black family and their disabled son. In season 3, it's Art Shepherd and his disabled sister. In season 6, it's the New Yorkers who are too vulgar for Bree's liking and are deemed eco-terrorists. Yeah, you heard me. Actually, let's take a moment to talk about the Boland storyline right quick, because they are entirely a vehicle for conservative bullshit. When we meet Nick and Angie Boland and their son Danny Boland, we immediately know that Nick Boland is a piece of shit, because the man is literally cheating on his wife with Susan's 20-something-year-old daughter Julie, who his teenage son Danny has a crush on. Yet, when Danny learns of his dad's cheating ass ways and informs his mother, we come to learn that Angie basically feels like she has to accept this bullshit from this bullshit ass because of what he did for her. Y'all want to know what he did for her? What he did for her? We find out that they're on the run because when Angie was in college, she was a climate activist in a climate activist group ran by her climate activist boyfriend, Patrick. Whoa. And she made a bomb that her boyfriend used to blow up a building in protest, but there was a person in that building unbeknownst to them, and that person died. And this was 20 years ago. Now, where does Nick Bolin come in? Nick Bolin, that adult man, was an FBI agent who was sent to investigate and arrest these college students. Instead, he started Angie on the low and fled with her and her son, who was really the child of her boyfriend, and they've been on the run as a family ever since. If you doubted how conservative this show is, they took the time to paint climate activists as domestic terrorists. Like, they literally refer to them as eco-terrorists consistently. They go out of their way to depict the ex-boyfriend, Danny's real father, as an inexplicably evil man who so badly wants to save the environment that it's turned him into a monster that for no reason under the sun, he just be killing people and spends his life trying to find his son Danny, only to bond with him for 5 minutes before deciding to kill him and his mother. The agenda to disparage climate activists and people who just generally give a about the environment as the real bad guys was so wild. Just listen to this.
Angie Bolin was having trouble sleeping. She kept dreaming about her life and the choices she had made. After all, it was her decision to drop out of college. It was her idea to join a group of eco-terrorists. She let herself fall in love with their charismatic leader, and she agreed to build him a bomb.
The season ended with Angie blowing up her ex and Nick suddenly being portrayed as this hero who would die for his family. Like he didn't spend the season cheating on his wife with very young women and verbally berating his play son. Like, let me get this straight. Angie and her ex were these evil eco-terrorists, but Nick is the hero, the FBI agent who could have stopped these big bad eco-terrorists. But instead of doing his job and arresting either one of them, he decided it was so much more important to sleep with Angie and date her. He said, his job and stopping Patrick's evil eco-terrorism so he could go on the run with this young woman that he's now convinced has to be on the run for the rest of her life with him because the FBI or Patrick will get her while he busy cheating. Meanwhile, we know the FBI ain't thought about them in 20 years because Patrick ass is the main villain they looking for and he ain't spent a day on the run. In fact, he be casually walking around their old stomping grounds telling people to keep an eye out for Angie and let him know if they see her with no trouble from the FBI. So the FBI damn sure is not the reason Angie needs to live a life on the run like this. So the only other threat is Patrick. The Nick could have arrested 20 years prior, but he chose pussy. And again, I remind you, cheating, also cheating and treating her son like shit. But he's somehow the hero, this raggedy former FBI agent, and the villains are the who want to save the earth. Anyway, so... And that's not even the only bullshit Angie and Danny had to deal with. As though it wasn't bad enough that Danny's crush was his daddy, when Julie gets attacked, Susan's overzealous ass accused this teenage boy of trying to murder Julie without a shred of evidence beyond her hysterical word. Let me tell y'all something. I am going to make a Susan hate video another time, but I would just like to say Susan should have been shot for how she carried on with Danny Bolin. Y'all hear me? Despite Susan being married to a who regularly gets accused of and arrested for crimes he didn't commit, Susan has no problem galvanizing the neighborhood to not only bully and harass a teenage boy just because she heard he liked her daughter and had an argument with her, and then subsequently tries to lower his car on top of him and crush him. Then she had the nerve to act like his mother was crazy when she came out to protect her child. Let me tell y'all something. I'd have beat Susan like she stole something. You hear me? Anyway, the point is, the neighborhood loves forming mobs to harm and ostracize people without a trial. Real conservative shit. Or as Brie Vanderkamp would say, traditional values. In season 3, the season's villains are Orson Hodges' ex-wife Alma Hodge and his mother Gloria Hodge, all of whom are vilified and pathologized as mentally ill people raining down terror on Orson and anyone who crosses their path. The mom literally looks and behaves like a cartoon villain. And where does she live? The asylum. The insane asylum. In season 6, Catherine has lost her actual mind. Because Mike broke up with her and married Susan, she becomes distraught and in so loses touch with reality.
I'm sure you've noticed that my behavior has been crazy, just in the clinical sense.
And what's the price for her friends, Mike, Susan, and anyone else trying to have grace with their friend who's going through a mental health episode? She starts breaking into Susan and them house, looking through the window and thing before ultimately stabbing herself and trying to frame Mike for murder. Because what is yet again the message? Don't help these crazy. But let me tell y'all something. Nothing is touching the ableism in season 2 storyline, because it wasn't enough to be ableist as all it was also racist as Let me tell y'all, if you or your loved ones were exposed to season 2 of Desperate Housewives, you may be entitled to compensation for your pain and suffering. I really don't even know where to begin, because never before in my black ass life have I been watching a show and the introduction of iconic ass Alfre Woodard wasn't a good thing. But boy, was it not a good thing. This storyline is another perfect example of why I never believe white people's white ass shows to incorporate black people, because whenever they do, it's a nightmare from hell. But this particular storyline was the Freddy Krueger of all nightmares. You hear me? Tell me why. Tell me why. They have Alfre Woodard playing this woman named Betty Applewhite, who has 2 sons. One named Matthew, who was played by fine-ass Mehcad Brooks, who they somehow expected to pass as a teenager. Please be so for real. And the other son, Caleb, is where we see the most racist, ableist, triggering shit I ever did see. My God. They don't ever actually say what Caleb's specific issue is. They just call him slow because, again, ableism. But what I gleaned from watching it is that Caleb is perhaps autistic. Both of my twin baby brothers are autistic, so I want y'all to know this up ass storyline was upsetting to me on another level. Because Caleb is neurodivergent in some way, he's quite literally treated like cattle, a dirty secret, a burden ruining their lives, and a ticking time bomb who should be put down.
Looking after your brother is a full-time job for both of us, and you know that.
Well, screw him.
Matthew!
No, I'm serious, Mom, because we have both put our entire lives on hold, and for what? It's been almost a year and he hasn't gotten any better.
I see him improving.
That's because you see what you want to see. Time to put him away, Mom. Just let some professionals take care of him. We wouldn't have to move. We'd have our lives back.
What you should understand about this storyline up front is that its purpose is for you to walk away thinking black men are dangerous. Even the nice ones, the good ones, the disabled ones, whatever. They're all brutes that you have the right to side-eye moving into your neighborhoods or dating your daughters. This shit was so racist and up that I had to fast forward several times. Desperate Housewives does this thing where every season they introduce some new neighbor with a mystery like we give a and then they spend all season dragging out telling us what it is like we give a but I don't have time for all of that. So let me tell y'all what it is. Matthew had a girlfriend who he broke up with, but the girlfriend kept trying to get back together with him, so she told him to meet her somewhere. But Caleb showed up instead and told her he liked her and wanted to date her, to which she laughed at him and insulted him, but he then kisses her without her consent, resulting in her slapping him and hitting him with a pole before a struggle ensues where she falls, leading Caleb to believe he killed her. So he goes home and tells his mother what happened and that he believes he killed her. So his mom's response is to chain him up in a basement, literally shackle him like a slave, stop speaking to him, slide him food like a prisoner in order to punish him.
Why does he keep doing that?
He knows it's annoying. He's just trying to get to us.
Yeah, well, it's working. Knock it off down there, do you hear what I'm saying?
Matthew! Matthew, sit down. You know we don't talk to him. That's part of his punishment.
The imagery alone on how they show Caleb is the most old school racist callbacks to slavery they had no business doing. Even the way he spoke was supposed to be a callback to slavery or yes, mass ass dialogue. Let me tell y'all something, I want Mark Cherry in prison, you know. They treat him as a literal brute and a wild animal that needed to be tamed. They quite literally chained him up like a slave. Like you gotta see the shackles they used to chain him in the basement right down to chaining him around his wrists. And when they have him escape from the basement, they first have him break into Gabby's home, because what conservatives don't love the visual of a woman walking into a home to be terrified at the big criminal black man that's broken in. Then from Gabby's house, they have him running through the street barefoot in like tattered clothes and chains like he's a literal slave, and his mother and everyone around him perceives and treats him like because he has a disability, he is a danger, and he is property of his mother for her to decide what to do with him in his life, not an autonomous human being. And I want to be clear that none of this bullshit had anything to do with protecting him from the police or anyone else. This wasn't like a mother protecting her son. The police didn't have any reason to suspect this in the show. No one was looking for them. Nothing. She unilaterally decided that the only options were for him to go to an inpatient mental health place or be a slave chained up in the basement of her home in solitary confinement while she pretends to her neighbors that she only has one son. At one point, she breaks him out of the mental health treatment place just to chain this up. The specific storyline they then cook up for him is that this big black man is slow and should be met with fair criminalization and or murder because he's inevitably going to prey on any pretty white and other non-black woman who needs protecting. First, it was him liking his brother's now dead girlfriend. Then when the brother Matthew starts dating Bree's daughter Danielle, he starts doing the same thing. Even when he meets Bree, they have him go, oh, you're pretty. They're pushing this idea that these brutes want non-black women, that they want to violate your mothers and your daughters. Because like we discussed earlier, the message is always that we should not give these people grace or second chances, that he has proven he's a criminal who will offend again.
Caleb?
Hey, Danielle.
What are you doing here?
Happy birthday.
You really have to go home. If my mom knew you were here, she'd freak.
Don't you want to wear it?
No, I don't. Now please leave.
I can help you with it.
No, didn't you hear me, you freak? Leave!
So they have him breaking into Danielle's room, trying to kiss her and shit, and she rejects him because she's dating Matthew, who, by the way, Bree lost her mind about Danielle dating.
Danielle, question. Is there a black man hiding under your bed?
What's going on?
I just thought you should know that I came home to find your son hiding underneath my daughter's bed. And it just seems to me that...
Inside. Right now.
Several things to note. Bree refers to teenage Matthew as a black man, not a boy like they call every other teenage boy in the show. Further, Danielle has been boys like her classmate John and grown like her history teacher. And we have not seen Bree pull a scene and bring them to anyone's front door like a criminal. But this is done for Matthew. They literally have Matthew's hands behind his back like he's under citizen's arrest from this white woman for the crime of what? Sleeping with a white girl? Y'all see the imagery they're invoking? And why does she have this massive problem? No reason was given because the issue is simply that he is a black guy, which Danielle says to Bree, and she never really objects because that's the tea. Then, when Betty finds out that Caleb broke into Danielle's room, she decides to kill her son because in her mind, living with his disability or having to live in a mental health treatment place is a fate worse than death. Because he has a disability, this woman literally sees him as her property who she has the right to kill. That is quite literally the epitome of ableism. This idea that disabled people have nothing to live for.
One called Silvercrest, which actually seems okay.
Put this ham in the fridge, will you? Make her make it for dinner.
Mom, I know you don't want to talk about this, but we have to. Mrs. Vanderkamp is going to call the police.
Promised myself I would never institutionalize you, brother.
Mom.
How long do you think it'd be before you'd act out? Maybe even hurt somebody? A couple of days? Week? Then they throw him in a straitjacket and drug away what's left of his mind. Spend the rest of his life at the mercy of strangers.
But if we don't send him to a hospital, he's going to end up in prison. And don't you think that's worse?
Yes, of course I do.
So what the hell are we going to do?
It's easy. It's painless. Just a few extra drops. He simply falls asleep. Caleb was meant for a better world than this, Matthew. It's time to give your brother the peace he deserves.
You're going to do this tonight?
No, the ice cream is for tomorrow. I'm taking Caleb on a picnic to Rockwater Lake. I'm preparing all of his favorite foods.
So when you're done, you're just going to leave him lying there?
I'll call 911 anonymously, but I will be watching from a distance to make sure that they pick up his body.
You know, Mom, you don't have to do this.
I won't let him hurt another girl. And I will not turn him over to people who will mock and abuse him. I just won't.
Then the big reveal we get is that Caleb didn't kill Matthew's ex-girlfriend and that it was actually Matthew who did it. It turns out that although Caleb hit her and she fell, she got up. And Matthew eventually showed up to meet her to tell her once again that it was over. When he wouldn't agree to get back together, the ex-girlfriend started talking shit and threatening to get his freak brother arrested for assaulting her, at which point he panicked, snapped, and sent her to God. I also want to point out a trend in Desperate Housewives that whenever a woman is the victim of domestic violence, either she's portrayed as a bitch who deserved it or it's downplayed in some other way. Here, we see it in how Matthew's girlfriend is portrayed as a bitch who provoked both Caleb and Matthew and was in some way less deserving of sympathy. But we also see it when Susan's mother tells her that she broke up with her longtime boyfriend because he hit her. And not only did Susan's bitch ass tell her mother she didn't believe her, when the man himself told Susan he hit her, Susan still chastised her mother for how ridiculous it was to leave a man because he hit her once. Bitch, what the fuck? Once it's revealed that Matthew killed his ex-girlfriend, just like with Caleb, the show could not risk us thinking these were one-off incidents. We need to see these young black men as predators with deep-seated insidious issues who will hurt someone again. So Matthew, who'd been chilling all season, suddenly starts flying into low rages. And the next thing you know, they have his mother, his black mother, calling Bree to tell her what a danger he is to her daughter, before calling the police on her son, at which point the police shoot him to death through the window of Bree's living room, and his mother and Caleb just move away like it's no biggie. Justice was served. Jail, Mark Cherry, you hear me? When the Applewhites moved into Wisteria Lane just minding their business off the rip, Susan started making noise complaints like white neighbors do, and the entire group decides that something's not right about them. They are suspicious of the new black neighbors for absolutely no reason other than quiet prejudice. But the events that unfold are meant to justify these kinds of racist attitudes and assumptions, which is also why the entire season is devoted to criminalizing and treating both Caleb and Matthew as a potential threat, when both Caleb and Matthew seem to be kind-hearted kids. Matthew is portrayed as a handsome, good kid trying to help his nut-ass mother and just live a normal life, who you on the surface have no reason beyond his skin color to be wearisome of. But him being secretly violent is meant to justify being suspicious of even the most unsuspecting of black kids. Similarly, Caleb is presented as sweet, kind, and childlike, but also as a danger because he is too slow to understand consent and will thus react violently and endanger white women, who he will of course want, invoking historically racist beliefs that have gotten black men unjustly killed and incarcerated. All of this is because the show wants you to think even the nice you want to feel sorry for is a danger. It's so much so that in their efforts to demonize black men, even the good ones are accounted for in this demonization. Again, Mark Cherry, count your days. And while we're on the topic of demonization of people with disability, mental health, or addiction, let's touch on the ways immigrants, poor people, working class people, and women are all presented. Funny enough, Desperate Housewives isn't guilty of glorifying the police in terms of how they portray them. I'd say they actually regularly showed police to be inept, corrupt, and downright criminal. My mind goes to the dirty police that framed Mike, Catherine's ex-husband who mercilessly abused her was a police officer, and Bree's crazy ass ex in the later seasons is a cop who starts abusing his authority and harassing her when she dumps him. However, despite the many examples of the police's shit all throughout the series, the characters routinely reaffirm their belief and commitment to police and prisons. And that is the heart of the conservative propaganda, because hypocrisy is an essential component to being a conservative. Because there's nothing more conservatives love than experiencing exactly why their policies and beliefs are wrong, yet still supporting the bullshit. How Desperate Housewives handles the issue of crime, criminals, police, and mob justice is a perfect example of how conservatism and hypocrisy go hand in hand. Not only did Susan's husband Mike previously spend years in prison for killing a bad cop, and he's been beat up and blackmailed by the police and wrongfully incarcerated 1,000,000 times, he shot folk and attempted to kill. Susan herself has been convicted of a crime, and she's done a lot more crime than she's ever been charged with. I want to remind you, this the bitch who burned Edie's house down and lowered a car on a teenage boy.
I was just having a bad day. You threatened to decapitate a man over a parking space?
A very bad day.
Thank you, Susan.
Edie, I burned your house down.
Oh, hey, what are you doing?
I know that you did it. I can see it in your eyes.
Mom!
Just admit that you did it. Admit it.
Stop, you know.
Yet, all Susan ever wants to do is accuse people of crime and get locked up with no evidence. At one point, she and Mike, the was incarcerated for many years, mind you, both start talking about their belief in punishment and justice and shit. I remember Mike buying MJ a little police toy.
Oh my God.
Which is something I have seen firsthand as a public defender in real life. Whenever I would represent a white person, they are my client, literally a criminal defendant, talking to me about how the system should be brutal towards everyone else but them, because it doesn't apply to them. Talking about the other people I represent like they the ones that deserve to be in jail. There's also another time where Susan has to remarry her ex-husband Carl for health insurance because she needs his health insurance to afford a life-saving surgery. More proof of why we need universal health care, some shit Republicans are against. But do you think the writers in any way tied 2 and 2 together? Hell no. This ability to quite literally be at the mercy of the system while thinking it doesn't apply to you is some white Republican shit. We see it all the time. Which is why I was not at all surprised that Mrs. McCluskey, the same bitch who could not afford to live without her husband's social security benefits, to the point that when he died, this bitch hid his dead body in a freezer so she could keep collecting his checks because she needed them to survive. That same bitch is a stone cold Republican who routinely insults liberals throughout the show, despite the fact that her broke ass is the main bitch who needs some damn welfare or socialism to come free her.
I know this will disappoint some of you, but I didn't kill Gilbert. I came home from a weekend in Laughlin and found him in front of the TV, dead. He still had the remote in his hand.
Good Lord.
It was 2 a.m., so I decided to wait until morning to call the funeral home. And I went to his desk to make sure everything was in order. I found his pension plan. And guess what? In the event of his death, I was not the beneficiary.
Who was?
His first wife. They were married when he started the job for 2 years. We were together for 34 years, and that idiot didn't change the paperwork. I not only lost my Gilbert, but I was about to lose everything. So
You put him in the freezer and kept cashing the checks.
And she only gets broker throughout the show when she marries this old broke in the neighborhood who was a veteran, which would have been another great opportunity to point out how the U.S. never seems to reward patriotism and the sacrifices of veterans with actual resources. In fact, what if I told you tens of thousands of veterans are homeless and without mental care in real life right now? Yet, McCluskey and her man were proud Republicans. And as wild as it sounds, that kind of hypocrisy is so consistent throughout the show. I want to remind y'all that the proudest Republican on Wisteria Lane, Bree Vanderkamp, a bitch who can't wait to call the police another motherfucker and preach old-fashioned values, helped her son get away with drunk driving, hitting Carlos's mother with a car which killed her because that's Republican shit. Consequences for thee and not for me. She didn't mind calling the cops a Matthew Black ass or him getting killed in a living room, but she and her son can't experience the same. And I told y'all that the entire final season of Desperate Housewives was bullshit rape apologia because Gabby's rapist was not murdered. It was self-defense and there was no reason to hide that body and all that mess. But nevertheless, Bree did in fact hide the body because when it comes to her and the people she cares about, with the exception of Orson, she understands that the criminal system and the law are not often fair, won't protect you, and will disproportionately harm you. Yet none of that real life lived experience she was having ever seemed to factor into her Republican ass and her throw the book at you ways when it came to others. She refused to let her son, or her friends go to prison, but she was quick to tell her husband Orson to carry his ass to jail when she learned he attempted to kill Mike by hitting him with a car. Meanwhile, her son, drunk wicked ass, actually did hit a woman with a car and successfully sent her home to God. I am just going to list off some of the many crimes the residents of Wisteria Lane got off throughout the show, most of which are shrugged off like they aren't crimes. Mary Alice and Paul Young murdered their son Zach's real mother and covered it up, which was a valid kill if you ask me, but it was murder nonetheless. Paul killed Martha Hubbard, which was also a valid kill, but again, still murder. Susan broke into Edie's home because Edie was seeing Mike when Susan's thirsty ass wanted him, and she accidentally burned Edie's home to the ground and took zero accountability. Susan also was a sex worker at one point. Edie intentionally burned Susan's home down. Mike did and sold drugs, killed a cop, broke into numerous people's home, and attempted to murder Paul Young. Gabrielle Solis was statutorily raping an underage boy. Carla Solis was committing numerous kinds of fraud and embezzlement, as well as the domestic violence that ensued when he forced Gabrielle to sign that posting up. Rex Vanderkamp was paying for sex. Catherine Crazy Ass hid the death of her child, buried her child in the woods, then replaced her with a child from a Russian orphanage. She also statutorily raped Susan's nephew, in addition to losing her whole ass mind and starting to terrorize and harass Mike and Susan and trying to break into their homes and accusing them of crimes they didn't commit. Lynette and Tom Scavo's delinquent ass twins burned down the pizza shop of the man Lynette was having an emotional affair with. Eddie was a literal serial killer killing all manner of bitches in the neighborhood. If it isn't clear to you already what I am trying to say, Wisteria Lane is riddled with criminals who commit all kind of crime and also get arrested and incarcerated all throughout the show. But because they're white people in the suburbs, neither they or their neighbors see themselves as such and continue snooting up their nose at the kind of people they see as criminals. Like the black neighbors they decided are criminally suspicious because their home was too loud. Or the convicted criminals. The entire neighborhood loses their minds at the thought of them being amongst when Paul tried to build a halfway house in the neighborhood as revenge on them.
Correctional center? What is that, a jail? I called the city. They say it's transitional housing for felons under house arrest.
A halfway house for convicts on our street?
Exactly.
I know that's not Karen keep a dead in the freezer to cash his checks McCluskey talking about exactly.
You're responsible for this?
Sure am.
What could you possibly be thinking?
The day I was released from prison, I felt so blessed. I knew that I was coming home to the loving embrace of this beautiful neighborhood. And most inmates, when they're released, don't have that kind of support. Most of them are isolated, which leads them to commit more crimes. Bringing them to a place like this, where they can interact with folks like you, might just keep a few of them from making that unfortunate choice.
Come on, Paul. We've got children here.
And I'm not spending my golden years borrowing a cup of sugar from drug dealers and rapists.
I know that ain't all. There's a lot to comment on in that scene because Paul is portrayed as the villain acting in bad faith to get revenge in the neighborhood by opening this halfway house. But what he's saying is actually true. And what Mrs. McCluskey is saying about drug dealers and rapists, that's the actual bad faith propaganda. Conservatives are constantly fear-mongering about crime and trying to convince the American public they need police and prisons to protect them from rapists and murderers. But it is worth noting that more than 80% of arrests nationwide are misdemeanors, low-level, and non-violent offenses. But more importantly, this whole neighborhood been filled with sickos and convicted criminals, mind you. Because trust, that is what Mike, Carlos, Mrs. McCluskey, Susan, Captain Paul, Felicia, and others are. But no one starts shaking in their boots or thinking there were criminals among them till Paul starts bringing hardened criminals into his house, i.e. a black guy they not only went out of their way to portray as a brute, they even had this weird theme with Paul's white blonde wife that was 1,000,000% invoking and legitimizing a million racist tropes.
Oh, you're a parolee. You can't afford to get in any trouble, can you?
That's right.
You got accused of a crime. They might lock you up for good.
What are you doing?
When I tell people you attacked me, I want it to look realistic.
What the hell? I never heard a woman in my life.
You think the police are gonna care about that? You're a convicted felon.
Can't be doing this. I already got 2 strikes.
I don't like to be unpleasant, Mr. Yeager. Really, I don't. But I am going to find out what my husband is up to, one way or the other.
Andrew, a mother who hit an elderly woman with his car and drove away. And even upon learning it was the mother of a family friend and that she died, still didn't give a That Andrew hears that Paul Young wants to open a halfway house in the neighborhood and says, do you really think I'm gonna let a bunch of dangerous ex-cons move in next to my mother?
For the 3rd time, no, I'm not gonna sell my house to Paul Young.
I'm sorry, I just had to make sure the vote is today.
Do you really think that I would let dangerous ex-cons move in next to my own mother?
But like I told y'all earlier, this show is a Republican's wet dream. So of course Lynette decides to get a gang of violent ex-berets who told her that they beat the f*** someone who wanted to open up a rehab to come address the problem.
We've all heard about your situation. We'd love to help.
Really?
Sure. Last year, we had a similar scare on our street. Some old hippie wanted to open up a drug rehab center.
I remember. Didn't that old hippie get beat up by a neighbor?
He made the mistake of mouthing off to one of my neighbors who's an ex-Green Beret. Newspaper made it sound way worse than it was.
And Lynette's son Parker does try to be the voice of reason and caution her against inviting this mob of ex-berets to wreak havoc on the community to stop a positive initiative. And he suggests,
If this protest works and the place doesn't open, what happens to all those ex-cons?
What happens to them?
I mean, if they don't get to stay here, where will they go?
They'll just go back to where they came from or some house in another neighborhood.
But what if that neighborhood doesn't want them either?
Well,
I mean, if they've done their time and they need a second chance, wouldn't it be better for them to be in a nice neighborhood?
in theory, yes, but that's not the way the world works. We have to think about our neighborhood, our children.
Ourselves?
but remember I told y'all, the show only allows us to hear the arguments opposing their conservative fuck shit for the sole purposes of invalidating the argument with lies, propaganda, and fear-mongering about highly unlikely shit. So of course, just when Lynette starts to sit with what Parker told her and question her choices, one of these hardened criminals immediately breaks into Bree's house and tries to harm her, which is meant to further justify the opposition to the halfway house and the riot that Lynette causes.
Sure? Would you like a sandwich with that? Who are you?
This a halfway house?
No. That's next door.
Ah. So I guess we're gonna be neighbors.
Well, I'm sure you're in a hurry to get settled in over there, so...
I'm in no hurry.
You see what they doing here? Leftist policies and programs designed to help people readjust into society and manage addiction, like halfway homes and rehabs, are painted as justifiable dangers to the community that they have no choice but to protect themselves from by using violence. This is what happens in real life. Lynette incited a riot that caused property damage, violent assaults, and almost killed Susan. But at no point does anyone acknowledge that that in and of itself is a crime, or how the results of that riot proved exactly why mob justice isn't an appropriate way to handle things.
Wait, what the hell are you doing?
Make sure this halfway house never opens up.
Oh my God!
This is what you want, isn't it?
No, not like this!
All right, you know what? You can go hang out with the other kitties.
Hey, Brett! Oh! Oh, please, this is McCluskey! Oh my God, I got... This is all on you. I hope you know that.
Hey, those are your friends out there, Lynette. The solid citizens of Fairview. Tell me again why you think they're better than a bunch of ex-cons.
Leave me alone! Stop!
It's funny because the climate activists got called eco-terrorists when someone was unintentionally killed for their protest. But the damage caused by this white neighborhood's protest where they intentionally invited violent agitators was not treated the same. But are we surprised? You should not be at this point. So let's talk about how Desperate Housewives handles immigration. Just like when Susan almost marries Jackson so he doesn't get deported, yet another storyline illustrating the perils of the United States immigration system that Republicans fight to make even worse. But this was also treated as insignificant by the characters because, again, Republican propaganda. It's also worth mentioning that neither Susan nor any of her conservative-ass homegirls had a problem with Susan breaking the law in either the healthcare or immigration circumstances for her own needs, because presumably they understand the necessity, yet none of these hoes have politics to help like Susan. Similarly, when Gabby and Carlos learned that their Chinese housekeeper had been trafficked to America and enslaved, and that the only way for her to stay in the country is either to get married or to have a baby, do you think there's any commentary about how f***ed up that is? No! And even worse, they don't even present her with the getting married option. They muscle her into being their surrogate, and we're supposed to see this as an even trade rather than hugely dehumanizing and predatory and evidence of the kinds of horrible situations the United States immigration system puts people in. But no. Instead, what happens is that immigrants, Mexicans, black people, Asians, and any kind of other are all broke-ass only fit to clean your house or work on your yard in this show. And the message is that immigrants in particular should not only be grateful, we should not help them because they can't be trusted, because they're all plotting on you in order to stay in this country. Which is why Gabrielle's Chinese housekeeper is portrayed as an ungrateful, evil bitch trying to steal her husband, rather than a victim of her exploitative employers who not only made her have a baby in order to remain in the US, but also took advantage of her, because ain't no reason under the sun Carlos should be his undocumented surrogate and housekeeper. If you weren't sure about how Desperate Housewives felt about immigrants and how they think immigrants should be treated, when Lynette Scavo's son Preston gets engaged to a Russian woman, Irina, that Lynette immediately decided was Eurotrash, who was too hot for her son and thus must be a gold digger who only wants him for his money and American citizenship, Lynette doesn't want them to get married. So what does she do? She calls ICE on the girl. Her exact words were, quote, "She's a foreigner. She's done something criminal. Start your deportation now."
A disgrace. She's a disgrace to humanity.
This is a common attitude many Americans have, but especially conservatives. The idea being that it is their right to police immigrants in the country, and that if they don't like an immigrant, they should be able to throw them out the country at a moment's notice. That's literally all 90 Day Fiancé ever turns into. Americans verbally berating and threatening their immigrant spouses with deportation the moment they don't behave as they wish. I cannot tell y'all how many go back to your own country I've been on the receiving end of since the day I moved to the States.
Now say the one side. I'm an American. I am going to guarantee I will get your ass deported.
While Irina, as a white blonde woman from Europe, would not typically be subjected to the kind of abuse usually reserved for black and brown immigrants, because under normal circumstances, she would be a conservative's definition of beauty, who they would be rushing to hold up as their queen, a la Sydney Sweeney American Eagle-eyed. The reason Irina gets the treatment she does is specifically because she's Russian, which America and American media have a long time vested interest in negatively depicting. So Irina as a character is just there to further the usual anti-Russian propaganda. We see a similar thing done in the show Shameless with the depiction of Svetlana. It wasn't enough for Desperate Housewives to portray Irina as a Russian trope and to have Lynette call ice on her. They also killed the bitch.
Christ.
Throughout Desperate Housewives, the women often make bigoted, problematic, conservative assumptions about people, and they are always made to waffle with those choices or to have those choices questioned, only to have their biases and assumptions validated, because the show wants to advance the idea that while conservative beliefs might sound problematic on their face, in actuality, they're right to think that way. So of course, in keeping with that recurring theme, Lynette is of course right about Preston's fiance's intentions. Irina is made to be every worst assumption Lynette had about her, to affirm Russian stereotypes and the implicit idea that you can't trust immigrants or romantic relationships with them because they are of course always in search of your oh so special American citizenship. So when Preston learns this, he calls off the wedding and breaks up with Irina. But when Irina leaves the house, she's offered a ride from Porter's loser friend Eddie that up until this point had been nothing more but a background character whose name I don't think we even knew. Eddie offers her a ride, and soon after she's in the car, he starts trying to proposition her now that she and Preston are broken up. When she laughs at his offer, he snaps and kills her, at which point it's revealed he is the serial killer who'd been attacking and killing women all season. We're talking about Desperate Housewives treatment of immigrants and immigration right now, so I'm not going to stick on this too long, but I can't mention Eddie without pointing out that Eddie as a character was a vessel for a lot of the agenda pushing that goes on throughout the show. Eddie appears out the clear blue sky in season 6 as Preston's friend in the background until he kills Irina, at which point we learn he's been killing gals for a minute. The show's rationale for why Eddie kills women is because his mother was a neglectful, abusive, alcoholic whore who chose men and liquor over her son and abused his kind nature so bad that when he ran into women who similarly berated and belittled and mistreated him in real life, he snapped and killed them.
There is a house in the town of Fairview. Inside this house lives a monster, the kind who kills young women. You may ask how such a monster came to be, and that's a very good question indeed.
Amanda Scotch.
The beginning of Eddie's serial killing career is shown to us in a flashback, where we saw Eddie decide to pay a sex worker to lose his virginity to. But when he tries to give the sex worker flowers, she laughs hysterically, and I do mean hysterically, causing him to snap and kill her. This was very similar to how Matthew Applewhite's girlfriend was depicted to have provoked both Matthew and Caleb to assault her by being cruel and laughing at them. If y'all aren't seeing what I'm pointing out to you, let me spell it out for you. They are demonizing women. They're depicting Eddie as a serial killer of women, yes, but they don't vilify him. In fact, Eddie is made to appear sympathetic, a victim of mean-spirited, cruel, evil women who belittle and take advantage of him and who provoke him to snap. And who are shown to be the worst of the women deserving of being on the opposite end of Eddie's ire? His alcoholic whore mother, the immigrant gold digger, the sex worker. So yeah, I say all that to say, stay woke. But back to Desperate Housewives and immigration. Calling ice on Irina was small potatoes, child, because by season 7, episode 8, I was ready to swing on Mark Cherry myself. Eva Longoria's character Gabby is just this show's outlet for getting away with saying anti-Latino and anti-immigrant shit by having a Latino person say it. But this is one of the worst offenses in the entire show. By season 7, Gabby and Carlos have 2 daughters, Juanita and Sylvia. But they learned that Juanita is not actually their daughter because she was switched at birth, and their real daughter was actually given to another Mexican couple. However, that other Mexican couple is undocumented, which doesn't become a problem until Gabby's impatient, materialistic, shallow, self-absorbed, stupid ass insists the husband and the undocumented couple commit a traffic infraction to avoid some traffic, which gets him arrested and subsequently detained by ICE. Now let me take a second to take a deep breath before we really get into this, because I'm getting mad just thinking about it. Let me explain it to you. Not everybody, but most people. Most people would be less inclined to support ICE, deportation, and calling ICE on immigrants if they truly understood how horrific the United States government treats immigrants. Period. but especially how they treat immigrants in ICE custody or who are facing removal. So what the show does in its effort to continue covertly indoctrinating Americans to ignore the plight of immigrants by tricking them into believing the United States immigration system isn't an unjust, punitive human rights violation imposed on particular groups of people. When the husband gets detained by ICE, the show says he was just sent back to his country the next day on a flight, like easy breezy, beautiful cover girl out here. No such a thing has happened. You can literally agree to be deported, and the US government will still hold you like a criminal for however the long they want, subject you to all manner of abuses and indignities, and send you back to a random country that you've never heard of or been to if they feel like it. People die in ICE custody, get raped, lose their children, get sterilized. But you let Desperate Housewives tell it, ICE just hands you a flight ticket and sends you on your way. So when the husband gets deported, his wife and daughter are forced to go on the run so that the wife doesn't get detained by ICE too. But Gabby doesn't want the daughter to go because she's Gabby's biological daughter. So what does Gabby do? She doesn't try to help the family. She doesn't offer to help them find or pay for an immigration attorney who could apply for an adjustment of status for the parents via their daughter or some other avenue like that, which would not get them citizenship or status for a very long time because the United States immigration system is intentionally slow as but it might at least spare them removal. Heavy on the might. The point is though, Gabby does not do any of that shit. Do you know what that bitch did? She calls ICE on the mother so she could get her deported and steal her child.
You raggedy bitch.
She actually fixes her mouth not to criticize the immigration system that's criminalizing these parents and tearing this family apart. She criticizes the mother for wanting to keep her child with her while evading ICE. This is not just conservative propaganda. This is the kind of evil conservative logic being used right now in real life to justify taking immigrant children from their parents in ICE detention and giving them away to American families with no consent from their parents or records for their parents to find them later. It's this kind of up logic that makes people think shit like this is okay or somehow in the best interest of the child. And that's not even the last of the bullshit. Later on, they called ICE on Susan's Canadian boyfriend Jackson, and that's minimized like it's not a big deal to be ripped away from the country you've built a life in if the country you're originally from doesn't scream war-torn. And remember how I said Gabrielle is just this show's opportunity to get all their anti-Latino shit off via a Latino character? Well, how could I forget when Mexican Gabby and Carlos wanted to get their child into a school, and when the school pointed out that they do need a more diverse population and them being Mexican would be a positive addition to the school, Carlos and Gabby's response is to say no, they want their daughter to get in on their own merit. That is a conservative dog whistle against affirmative action. And this Republican show creator made sure to have the Mexican characters be the ones repeating this white Republican man propaganda in order to legitimize it.
I'm Mexican?
Honey, what did you just say?
He called me Mexican.
You are Mexican, honey. You know that.
Since when? I thought we were American.
Yes, but our ancestors came from Mexico.
Really? So we're like those people who sell oranges on the side of the road?
They also regularly try to justify workplace discrimination and employer retaliation. But the worst is when Lynette is pregnant and has to keep it a secret from Carlos, her boss and friend of 15 years, because he gave her a promotion that he withheld from another woman because that woman got pregnant, which is illegal. And when Gabby and Carlos finally discover that Lynette is pregnant, they treat her like a criminal who wronged them by getting pregnant and having the fucking audacity to take a promotion she earned because God forbid she might need to take the maternity leave she's entitled to. So they actively start trying to get this pregnant woman, their friend, to quit so she can't sue for wrongful termination and retaliation, which by the way, she definitely would have been able to sue regardless because of all the blatantly f***ed up shit Carlos was doing. And when she finally sues, Carlos and Gabby treat her like the villain, and she's only forgiven because she saved their child from being hit by a plane, as though she needed any forgiveness for rightfully suing these up ass people. But again, conservative propaganda wants you to believe that women should not even be in the workplace, especially mothers. It's perfectly acceptable to bully them out the job and mistreat them in the workplace because they should be home raising their kids. And speaking of hating women, I would be remiss if I failed to point out the constant thread of presenting women, girls, and the gays as weaponizing sexual and physical assault claims against innocent people. Multiple women are presented as desperate enough to do this. Edie fakes a suicide and threatens to get Carl arrested in order to force him to be with her. Catherine stabs herself and tells the police Mike did it in order to get him to be with her. Alma lies that Orson was beating her and faked her own death in order to get him to be with her. Andrew, the gay son, lies on his mother Bree and says she touched him in order to get himself emancipated. Danielle, the teenager, is presented as being vindictively reporting her history teacher who was raping her, not because it was rape, but because she was angry he wouldn't leave his wife for her. Even Tom's side baby Kayla is portrayed as an evil little girl pretending that Lynette physically abused her to get her sent to jail, because this is true conservative propaganda. This idea that women are just making up accusations to destroy men, that those are the kinds of things women do, which is bullshit. And last but not least of the f***ed up things in Desperate Housewives, the fatphobia was at a criminal level. A criminal level. Criminal.
Part of the reason I'm on this diet is because carrying YouTube brats for 18 months made mommy fat. I had 2 children. For what? Breakfast? Honey, I know you want to go home and watch your cartoons, but you had a lot of cake, so I was thinking I'd take you to the park.
No.
You sure? Running around in the sun and fresh air would make you feel good.
No.
Okay.
Hey, Juanita, you want to play a new game on the way home? Winner gets a new doll.
Okay. Hey!
Mommy, what are you doing? It's a new game I invented, and you're winning 1-0.
That's disgusting. The sheer amount of times they dehumanized fat people and even fat children was obscene. Between Gabby allegedly gaining 5 pounds and Edie and the show narrator telling us that she had lost her beauty, the show treating her daughters being fat as a punishment for her shallowness, Gabby repeatedly addressing Lynette's weight gain like an issue of life or death, Susan instructed Mike to teach their son how to beat up Gabby's daughter on the basis that feminism means that women can be beat up too, and that because the little girl is fat, she's not a little girl and it's okay for a boy to beat her up. I want y'all to know, Susan Meyer could get hit by a train and it wouldn't be half of what she deserved. Then she also went and pushed Gabby's daughter, a 4-year-old mind you, to the ground. Then, because Susan quite literally thinks being fat is a fate worse than death, which is depicted when the show killed Carl off for absolutely no reason, and she wonders what her life would have been like had she not left him for cheating. And her nightmare simulation is that he still would have left her because she would have gotten fat from emotionally eating through her depression, and then she wouldn't have been able to get Mike either because he wouldn't have wanted her because she was fat. And I understand why she thought Mike wouldn't have been with her if she was fat, because look how the man was watching her weight while she was pregnant.
Susan.
What? I'm eating for 2.
Well, do both of you want to be fat?
There are so many more things wrong with Desperate Housewives. I am reminded of the random Confederate reenactment or the several relatives who were casually announced as racist like Mike's mother, but your girl is tired. So I officially rest my case. Stop what you're doing and listen up. You just watched a video on one of my channels, but the Illuminati-verse is huge, and I want to tell you what everything is and how to find it. The Illuminati-verse has 6 channels. On the YouTube homepage of any one of those channels, every single channel in the Illuminati-verse is featured at the bottom of the page, so you can always easily find them. Okay, remember I said that. Don't say I ain't tell you how to find it. Subscribe to my main channel, Illuminati, to find my Illuminati productions, which are my long-form video essays, and also all of my backlog of content. Subscribe to my second love child, Illuminati Pop, for my weekly video essays analyzing my favorite TV and movie shows and characters. Illuminati Pop also has its own Patreon where you get all of those videos uncensored. Subscribe to my channel, Olay and Friends, for my podcast, Olay and Friends. New episodes of Olay and Friends come out every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe to Olay and Chill for new episodes of my podcast, Olay and Chill, every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And also, both Olay and Friends and Olay and Chill are both available on streaming platforms like Spotify. Subscribe to Illuminati Bites if you want my takes, but you don't have an hour to spend. Subscribe to Illuminati Politics for my political analysis and my State of the Union type addresses on my show O Squared. And last but not least, subscribe to my Substack Illuminati for my written work.